Come on, Soda Pop, let's go.
Again, a hearty welcome to all of you tonight. If you have anything that you'd like to discuss with the City Council, please come on forward. We'd welcome your input. All we'd ask are just a couple things. Just introduce yourself to the people of our town. Let us know your name. If you could keep your comments to 5 minutes or less, we'd appreciate that. And then, if the item you want to discuss is later on in the agenda, we'd ask you to hold off until that agenda item comes into play. Would anybody want to address the council? Welcome.
Good evening, Greg Neitzert. There's 2 or 3 things I guess I'd like to talk about today. First is I saw this afternoon, Sioux Falls levee is now accredited. It's a press conference today. I don't think a lot of people maybe realize this is a big deal. This is a good thing. We're finally on the way, hopefully, to getting these levees certified and getting these maps changed. There's thousands of properties in the city that they can't expand, they can't build because they're below BFE, which is the base flood elevation, and it's holding up a lot of development. And if we get these things remapped, there's going to be a lot of people that are finally going to be able to develop, and it's going to open up quite a lot of economic impact, I would think. So I would encourage anybody to talk to their elected federal representatives to encourage them to maybe lean on FEMA and see if they could get this mapping done a little faster. I wouldn't hold my breath, but see what we can do. The second part would be billboards. I came to you, I don't know, maybe a month or 2 ago about billboards, and I'd like to encourage you to keep looking at the issue. I'm working on one of my PowerPoint presentations I hope to bring to you soon. I've got some very specific amendment ideas. Been doing a lot of research. I'm finding that there's some constraints. There's state law. There's a case, Lamar Outdoor versus Rapid City, that's in district court right now and in federal court. And state law does put up some constraints, as I'm sure Councilor Erickson probably knows. She's probably been through this. But I think we can work around it. And as I've been talking to citizens, in fact, I was talking to my doctor today who had seen me in the paper. I keep hearing the same thing over and over. First of all, most people agree. There's very few people that want a lot of billboards. And the second part is that specifically what they want is they don't want billboards close to residential, schools, parks, and they don't want an undue concentration. They don't want them every 200 feet as you're going up and down the street. So I think there's some reasonable things that we could do to tweak the ordinance, and we could stop this from getting out of control. Rapid City is kind of a cautionary tale, I would say, if you look at what they've had happen, and we don't want to get there, so we should try to nip that in the bud. The last thing is, I've been thinking about mentioning this for quite a while, the siding issue. So I've been doing quite a bit of research on the siding issue, and there's a lot that I could say about it, and I'm maybe going to hold my fire a little bit, but I think what I would say is I'm not an expert at siding, and whenever I say anything publicly, I like to make sure I know what I'm talking about. So I've talked to 3 different people, all of whom I would consider experts in the industry. One is a commercial building contractor, one is a building official for another city in the region who's been doing it for 30 years, and another is a metal fabricator. And I guess basically the summary is none of them, I had all of them watch the press conference and look at this. All 3 of them agree that the particular fix we're talking about is not going to work, and that we're taking a product that was really not meant to be used in the way that we're looking at using it, and we're trying to make it work. We should be pre-rolling this off-site, or we should be using something else. So I hope we can look close at this, and I hope as far as the budget goes, I won't say a whole lot about it since we talk about it later, but that we look at what is the worst case scenario. So if we end up stuck with this bill, we know what we're going to have to pay for it, because I'm starting to fear that I don't like to be negative, but I worry about whether we're going to get stuck with this here. So thanks.
Thanks, Greg, and thanks for being so engaged. We appreciate it. Welcome.
I'm Roger Elgersma, and I talk about city bus fares since the annual budget's coming up, and there's talk about some plans to increase the fares. I don't use the bus very often. I usually use a bicycle, so this don't affect me a lot. Although the last time you didn't raise the rates, you took away the bus transfer, which literally doubled my rates because it takes me $2 to go somewhere instead of $1. If I go a 5-mile round trip to the grocery store, it costs me $4. When I went to Minneapolis to visit my daughter this summer, I could go 35 miles from Coon Rapids way in the northwest to St. Paul for $3, including a crosstown express that went down the freeway 10, 15 minutes. And so, and same thing in Houston, I could go 50 miles to visit my old college friend for $5.50. So the cost per mile in big cities is way less than here. Now, I'm not saying you gotta match them. I know it's highly subsidized, and I don't think people should just get things for free. I think that even people on fixed incomes get a cost of living increase. So if you raise the rates matching cost of living increase, I don't think there can be too much complaint from that end, and you can actually get some more. As far as the amount of money it costs, when we spend $25 million to put an extra lane on Russell Street, which is going to be used, 5 times a year, and my dad's seen Walt Disney World in Florida empty in 20 minutes because they don't have any people crossing the street. The lanes just keep moving, and if you manage it right, you can move a whole lot of cars in a short time. This intersection right at the corner of this building, at 5 o'clock, if the red light comes on Minnesota Avenue, the cars back up through this stoplight into the next block. And the bigger a city gets, the more that you get. I told my friends in Houston, it cost me $2.75 to get downtown. Well, it was 30 miles, I couldn't really complain. But if people are going to make a short ride, that's too much. What they did is they switched the fares to $1, even though it's a 3-mile route, a 3-hour route. You got half-hour and hour routes here. But I said, if you're going to get more people downtown, you can't get more cars downtown. These block square skyscrapers aren't going to back up 10 feet to put your wider street, just like the artist leader and the phone company aren't going to back their buildings up 10 feet to get a wider street. And so the bigger the city gets, the more you need buses to get enough people to high density areas. You're not, in some areas of town you can build more streets or you can spend more on buses. And you're going to have to spend more on buses for certain parts of town where you can't make the streets wider. So I'm not against all raises, but I think for the long range, you got to keep a good, viable, cheap bus system if you're going to have enough transportation to make your city flow well. You can't just add that many more cars. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Folks, did anybody else want to address the council? Welcome.
Thank you. My name's Darren McDonald.
Hey, Darren.
My wife and I are blessed enough to own a small convenience store at 2200 East 10th Street. And I'm here tonight to tell you about my experience with the City of Sioux Falls ordinance on dumpster enclosures. I apologize for not having exact dates, but in the fall of 2012, I received a letter to put up an enclosure on my dumpsters in a certain amount of time. I contacted the code enforcement department and let them know I would be unable to put one up in that time frame. They were kind enough to take up the issue again in the spring. So in the spring, they let me know that I needed to put one up. I decided to get a couple of bids and decided I couldn't afford to pay someone to put one up. Instead, I started to put one up myself. It took longer than the city liked, so in the meantime, I received a $100 fine, then a $200 fine, then a $300 fine. I finished the dumpster enclosure sometimes towards the end of summer. Again, I apologize for not having the exact dates on the fines or the completion date. What I would like to do tonight is show you, city council members, pictures of city-owned properties that fail to comply with the city's own ordinance. Literally, there are thousands of locations in the city in violation. Not all city-owned, but privately, and and everything. The current way that this ordinance is enforced is a tattletale system. One business tattletales on another, and they're forced to comply with this ordinance. To finish my own personal story, once I completed my own dumpster enclosure, I didn't hear from the city for 6 months until they decided to take me to small claims court to collect $600 that I didn't pay. Now I have a judgment against me. I will be unable to pay this judgment when it is due because of some unforeseen expenses. It is great for the city's tax base to see shiny new stations like Casey's come and go. Excuse me, a little nervous. And Hy-Vee gas. Unfortunately, for independently owned mom and pop stores like my wife and I, it brings many challenges. I don't see how the city can legally fine a small business when it fails to follow its own ordinance. Thanks.
Darren, very good. Thank you. Appreciate that. Let's continue with the pictures until we're done.
Oh, yeah.
And for the folks watching on TV, what we're showing are dumpsters in town that Darren has found that do not have enclosures around them. Is that correct? Yeah. Yep. Thank you, Darren.
Yeah, lots of them. Yep. Parks Department. City Hall.
Darren, again, thank you very much for your commentary tonight. We appreciate it, and we will follow up on it. Mark my words, we'll follow up on it. Is there anybody else who wanted to speak on behalf of the city of Sioux Falls?
Welcome. Morning, Mayor, council members.
Good afternoon.
I'm Ily Turman from Sioux Falls. Trying to figure out why you're going to move a calendar date for one city council member so far in after the city council is supposed to be meeting. Another thing I want to know, and I've gotten a lot of guff over this in Des Moines, in Sioux City, and in Sioux Falls. Why you, Mayor, and why this city council approved $500,000 for a private tennis court, and you want to take money away from the poor people that are trying to ride the handicap bus system. If you can give $500,000 to a private entity, give another $500,000 to the handicap bus transportation system. And the other thing is, I think it's time that this city council decide that they will appoint the ethics board, not you, Mayor. We cannot figure out how you can go in front of a body that you personally appointed and get anything you want. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weiderman. We appreciate it. Is there anybody else who want to engage the council?
Come on, Soda Pop, let's go. Come on, let's go. Come on.